Senegal's president says he will not seek a controversial third term in office. This ended weeks of speculation. So what's behind Macky Sall's decision? Who might replace him? And will it have an impact on other nations in the region? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Cyril Vanier. Senegal's president, Macky Sall, has put an end to months of uncertainty by confirming that he will not seek a controversial third term next year. In a speech on Monday night, Sall said his decision was made after careful deliberation. His announcement comes after significant rejection of a potential third term. Opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, who has been sentenced to 2 years in prison for, quote, corrupting youth, had threatened to organize more protests. Sall's government has faced widespread and at times violent demonstrations in recent weeks. At least 16 people were killed last month. Now, after Sall's promise not to run again, democracy advocates are hopeful that we will set a positive example in the region.
I know that my decision not to stand as a candidate will come as a surprise to the many people whose sincere admiration, trust and loyalty I know. It will also surprise those who wish to see me continue to guide the construction of Senegal, which is increasingly finding its feet. Senegal is bigger than I am, and it's full of leaders equally capable of pushing the country towards emergence.
Here's some reaction from Senegal after the president's address to the nation.
You have to respect your word, and it's this respect that has led to this situation. From now on, he will be highly respected internationally.
We need a president who takes pity on the Senegalese. We need a president who doesn't kill his people. We need a president who listens to his people.
It's his choice and he's our leader. We accept his decision and will support whomever he nominates.
Some key dates to bear in mind before we jump into this conversation. Recent timeline is this. Macky Sall was first elected in 2012 when he defeated Abdoulaye Wade, the incumbent, who was at the time running for a third term. In 2016, voters approved a constitutional reform proposed by Sall to shorten a single presidential term from 7 to 5 years. That also reaffirmed the two-term limit. Well, after serving out his first term, Sall was then re-elected in 2019, and the president and his allies have since argued that the two-term limit didn't apply to Sall since there was that constitutional change during his first term. They claimed he was therefore eligible for another term. All right, now let's bring in our guests from Dakar. Joining us today is Aliou, Senegal's Minister of Culture and Historical Heritage. It's great to have you on the program, sir. And in London, Paul Melly is with us. You're a consulting fellow for the Africa program at Chatham House. Welcome to both of you to the program. Mr. Sow, let's start with you. You are a cabinet minister. When did you find out that the president would not be running for a third term?
Thank you, Cyril. I discovered that decision yesterday after his message, during his message. Even though before that we had a very important political meeting around the Prime Minister and with many cabinet ministers and political party leaders of his presidential coalition. We were discussing and then working on the two possible decisions and then to see what to do exactly after his message. Even though many of us will interact with him politically on a daily basis, we could have our own opinion. I was not surprised myself because for more than 25 years, I am interacting permanently with President Sall. 20 years and 21 years ago, we were all cabinet members. And then and I know, the personality, the mentality, and the capacity of taking very powerful decision by President Macky Sall. It's not something new. When situations are very particular, such as what we have now in general, he is a person who, in a pragmatic, responsible way, take decisions without, falling in the traps of egotism or private interest or group interest. He put above all the general interest and the image of Senegal is social cohesion and national unity.
Okay.
We are not...
Mr. So, stand by for just a second, because I would like you to pull back the curtain and bring us inside the decision-making in just a second, but I'd like to bring in Paul Melly just before we do that. Paul, you're a journalist and political analyst. You obviously study these things. You listened keenly to the speech by Mr. Sall. What stood out to you in that speech?
Well, I think what really stood out, first of all, was the very, very big focus on that he made on criticizing violence and criticizing politicians who use inflammatory language. And that really dominated the first half of the speech, more or less. And it was only later on that he came to, as it were, say, and as for myself, thank you for all the support I've had, but I will not be running for election next year. And so that big focus on violence was clearly, without naming him, it was clearly critique of Ousmane Sonko, the opposition leader who is recently convicted on offences relating to his personal conduct and who is effectively under, it's not official house arrest, but he's effectively under house arrest because the security forces are surrounding the area where he lives, and who's potentially going to serve a 2-year jail term. So in that situation, it seemed as if the president wanted to really challenge the possibility, the political threat that Sonko would represent were he to be allowed to run for election. And that really was the bit of the speech that first of all stood out. And it was only after that that he then made this announcement, which many Senegalese had not been expecting, that he had decided not to run, and effectively admitting that this was something that he had reflected on, despite the promises he had made over a number of years, saying he would only run for 2 terms. He basically, first, a few months ago, had insisted that he would have the right to run if he chose to do so, and then yesterday confirmed that he had been thinking about this, that this was a decision that had weighed up. It isn't something, despite his earlier promises, he quite clearly conceded, if you like, that he had considered standing again.
And let's try and understand today why he chose not to do so. Mr. So, can you pull back the curtain, as I was saying earlier, on that decision-making? What was the driving factor in the president's decision not to run for a 3rd term, despite the fact that he said, and he repeated during his speech, that according to him, he had the right to do so?
Cyril, let me tell you that all our political analysts, or most of them, they know that our constitution permits the President Sall to run for a second 5-year term. This is clear.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, that's a controversial statement, and you know everybody doesn't agree with that.
I know, but the majority of them, they know it. Even the opposition members and leaders, many of them, they stated like that in the past, saying that, okay, they know that the Constitution allows the President Sall to run, but it's not very important now. So what is important is that the fact is, so they know that the record of achievements of President Sall is something very positive, appreciated, and he transformed totally in a positive way, I mean, Senegalese image and Senegalese people's daily life. But what is important is President Sall is a man of honor. President Sall proved that keeping his word is literally a matter of life and death. That what is that African sacrality of the word given in a continent of orality is wonderfully preserved by President Sall. Let me tell you, President Sall is a member of a very famous warriors, community of Senegal known as the Ceddo Koliabe. They are very attached to the respect of their words when they pronounce it publicly. And then he wrote a book, his program book in 2019, saying that he will not run after this term. It's not that using those clear words, but saying that it was his last term, even though the first term was a 7-year term and not 5-year term. And after this, since all this mumbo jumbo and hullabaloo around, his candidacy or not, is a proof that the opposition members knows from the popularity of President Sall, his record of achievements, if he runs, he can easily make it. They know it.
But sir, why didn't he kill this conversation?
And what is important, as I said, he organized many times a national dialogue process in Senegal. And then
we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a second. But let's do this in chapters, if you don't mind, for the benefit of our viewers. You said he's a man of honor, and that's why he didn't run again, because he had already announced that he had given his word that he wouldn't run for a third term. So my question to you is, if that is so, why didn't he kill the conversation about a potential third term, which has been paralyzing Senegalese politics for about a year now, if not longer? Why didn't he kill that conversation a year ago?
Let me tell you, Cyril, if he did it earlier, this nation would have undergone very clumsy political competitions in cabinet ministers' activities, in his coalition, in all the nation. And President Sall is literally attached to actions. His philosophy of action would be totally, destroyed by those, those erratic competitions.
You're saying personal ambitions would have come to light, but that's normal in a democracy.
So then he said, I know, but you cannot easily release an information according to which it is your last term and you have constitutional right to run, and then it is like telling people, now compete, everybody can set traps against others. The cohesion of his cabinet ministers will be destroyed, and then the population can be the victims of those petty political competition. He wanted to act as a man of action and put everybody on the way of work and action for the people. And then he said, when it is time, I will act and I will say what is my final words and my final words and my decision. He did it 7 months before the D-Day. I think that this opposition, which lacks a program and proposals, mobilizing people around that matter of President Salles being candidate or not, now they are totally lost because they don't know what to do exactly.
Okay, hold on, Mr. Sir, hold on. Again, let's do this. Let's do this.
They would have been sorry. They would not have been so ridiculous and sexist and then senselessly so brutal. But now I think that what is important is 7 months before the D-Day, President Salles with the world, with his nation, a strong, a powerful decision, and they're saying that I want to be but the solution for my nation. I want to be but the order keeper. I want to be but a peacemaker. I want to be something else.
Okay, let us jump in. I need to bring Paul Melly back into this conversation. We will absolutely get to the question of who might succeed Mr. Sall and what the political landscape now holds for Senegal and the political rivalries that will come to light. But let's just close the chapter of the post-mortem on Mr. Sall's decision not to run. Paul Melly, why do you think the president chose not to run?
Well, I think there are two reasons. One is there was a serious chance that he could lose because Senegal has the kind of two-round voting system, which is common in many French-speaking countries. And that means that in the first round, you have a range of candidates, and then unless one person gets more than 50% of the total vote in that first ballot, then it goes to a second round between the top two placed contenders. And history has shown in Senegal that when that happens, it is quite possible for an incumbent president to be defeated because the opposition may unite around a single challenger for that final runoff round. And in fact, that is how Macky Sall himself came to the presidency. And this is where history is really important because it shapes the way Senegalese look at these issues. In 2000, Abdoulaye Wade was elected president. After he'd become president, he also sought to do a third term after 2 terms. And again, as in the case of Macky Sall, he cited the fact that there had been a change in the length of the presidential term as grounds for saying that the rules had changed, and so he was entitled to run again. And it was Macky Sall, as the leading opposition candidate, the man who broke through to the final runoff in the 2012 election, who successfully mounted that challenge and attracted all the support of the rest of the opposition behind him to throw Abdoulaye Wade out in the 2012 election. And so that memory is there in the minds of many Senegalese, and even among younger Senegalese who can't actually remember those events, this history is sort of well known to them. And so Macky Sall knew that there was that example, and people have been talking quite a lot about the possibility that somehow the opposition would unite to challenge him. So defeat was a real possibility. And the other practical reality is simply that there had been so much unrest, so much protest, and particularly in support of the opposition figure Ousmane Sonko, among young people, protest that has often turned into violent confrontations with the police. And we've seen, I think it's at least 16 people killed in the latest unrest over just last month. So President Sall knew that even if he was re-elected, he would be the president of a country where there was boiling resentment among a substantial section of the population, and particularly among young people, and that in itself would put at risk his ability to carry forward the agenda which, as the minister has rightly pointed out, he has a very solid economic track record, but of course, if you have constant unrest, the prospects of taking that economic success forward are going to be undermined. So, though he knew he could lose, and it had happened to his predecessor, and he knew that even if he won, the country risked being even more unstable.
Mr. So, how does Macky Sall see his political future? Does he want to be a kingmaker? Does he want to pull strings? Does he want to influence? How does he intend to live out the rest of his life after the presidency?
His life after presidency cannot but be brilliant, wonderful, and great, like his greatness as president, his greatness as Pan-Africanist, his greatness as a person who took a very important historical decision.
Paul Melly, the point I was making to Mr. So is, yes, they were celebrating, and they were celebrating the president in the streets. That is accurate, but they were celebrating the fact that he was stepping down. So there's two sides to that story.
Yeah, I think there are, and it's true that he has taken a brave decision. There was a lot of pressure on him, particularly from people surrounding him who were hoping that he would stay on, that he would run again. And the future of his political coalition and his own party and their prospects for the presidency look quite uncertain because the ground hasn't been very well prepared. Although there are potential successors, such as the Prime Minister Amadou Ba, of course, until last night, those people weren't focused on preparing for a presidential election at all. But it's also true that there's a big sense of relief. Many of the comments from Senegalese this morning and last night have been to the effect of saying, why didn't he tell us this earlier? Of course, as with any political succession situation, as the minister pointed out, yes, you'll get competition, yes, you'll get rivalries, but there are other countries in the region. Ghana, for example, has a long tradition of presidents standing down after 2 terms, Nigeria, and Niger, for example, which is a country which many Senegalese will notice what's happens in Niger because, like Senegal, it's a francophone country. The previous president of Niger, Mahamadou Issoufou, he was pressed by many people who said, well, your track record's quite good. Why don't you think of changing the constitution so that you could run for a 3rd term? And he basically said, well, look, I would be a very arrogant man if I thought, there are more than 20 million people in Niger. I would be very arrogant if I thought I was the only one of all those people who could govern this country. And he made it clear right from the outset that he wouldn't run for a third term. And the ground was prepared, an election happened, it passed off relatively smoothly. And in fact, because he had prepared the ground very well before, it gave a chance for his preferred successor, Mohamed Bazoum, to run as his successor and get elected. Whereas now for Macky Sall, that succession thing looks a lot less certain because the ground hasn't been prepared. And especially with the deaths in the recent protests, the most recent protests in the last few weeks, even though they were largely relating to this case of Mr. Sonko, there will be many people in Senegal who say, well, if Macky Sall had made his views clear earlier on, perhaps that unrest and those lives might not have been lost.
A couple names I want to throw at you. Khalifa Sall, Karim Wade, two people who were potentially and in fact popular rivals to the president. Both of them in recent years were sidelined, both of them jailed on corruption charges, both of them then pardoned by the president. And after the national consultation, the national dialogue that was organized by Macky Sall just recently in Senegal, one of the strongest recommendations is to change the rules to allow them now, despite their previous jail sentences, to be able to run for president. Do you think they could make an impact on the next presidential race?
Of course, President Sall announced yesterday in his message that in this week, the government will send, all the necessary documents to the parliament so as to start discussing all or taking measures related, parliamentary measures related to all those recommendations which resulted in consensus by the participants, proving that he has nothing to do with, the exclusion or not of a candidate or potential candidate. But people had were in conflict with the law. They were condemned, for finally pardoned by the president. But we have till now legal consequences on electoral competition. But the dialogue recommended to give them the opportunity to run, and the parliament, which is sovereign, will be, contacted by the government. And the other thing that we need also to add is, some days ago, the overwhelming majority of the mayors and local government leaders went to see President Sall and asked them to be their candidate. Yesterday, as I told you, millions of Senegalese, his supporters, the coalition members, political party leaders, all they were very sad. But he said, it's not a matter of coalition, it's not a matter of party, it's a matter of a nation.
Joining us on the line now from Dakar is Aminata Toure. She is the former Prime Minister of Senegal. Thank you very much for joining us on the program, albeit a little late. We have been struggling with connections from Dakar during this program, but we thank you for your patience and your participation in the show. I do want to ask you your reaction to the president deciding not to seek a third term in office. And just for context, you were previously an ally of Macky Sall and then had a falling out with him.
Well, as a matter of fact, I led the legislative election less than a year ago, and we parted because of the third term, precisely. So I would say it's never too late, but unfortunately it's late. But, he ended up respecting the Constitution, and that's what matters at the end. Now, I have to really congratulate all the Democrats, the young people who stood to defend the democracy, the Senegalese democracy. Our diaspora has been very dynamic, and at last, President Macky Sall understood that it was better for the country, better for himself to step down when his second and last term ends in February 2024. Unfortunately, as you may have followed, during the riot, 16 people lost their lives. And of course, this has to be investigated. so we know, who are the perpetrators, because that's also part of democracy, accountability when these types of events occur. So Senegalese democracy is to go on track. That's a first step, a first victory, I would say. But at the same time now, we have to make sure that everybody who is interested in running can run. So I'm talking about inclusive elections. We do have a lot of our young people.
Can I jump in, Ms. Toure? Am I correct that you are running for office?
I do. I announced my candidacy since 1st of January. I very much do. But as you know, we have to go through sponsorship, what we call sponsorship. And we hope that it's going to be a fair process. We call upon everybody to participate because President Macky Sall is pardoning some political actors who had issues with justice and who could not run. So he has to extend that pardon to everybody. So we go through peaceful and transparent elections.
Mr. Sow, as Minister of Culture and Historical Heritage of Senegal, and I say this bearing in mind that we really don't have much time left on this show, who would you like to see run for office? Who would you like to see become the next president of Senegal after Macky Sall? Just briefly, please.
Any Senegalese who feels, the criteria of being a candidate can run, and even in our coalition or his party or any other party which is member of this coalition. So he can have his own choices because he knows us all better because of his regular interaction with many of us. And then I do believe that as a leader of a coalition, he will organize consultation, discuss with people, and then release his proposal as a candidate for the majority supporting his leadership. As you know, in all democracies, all of them will not support maybe that. Some of them will run or take their personal decisions. But what is important is now somebody who is capable of, being a great successor of President Macky Sall, and then we can implement his philosophy of action, and we can really continue those good initiatives that resulted in a vibrant and wonderful record of achievements as I underlined at the very beginning. But I do believe that he will make the choice. He's a man who usually takes the good decisions, very patient, very calm, very quiet, who will never, be victims of blackmail or oppression, but he's a great leader, African leader. I'm quite sure that he will make the good choice and the good proposal, and then the majority of his coalition will back up his choice and then do the best as we used to do in the past to make
Thank you so much. I want to thank all our guests, Aliou, Paul, Melly, Aminata, Toure. I want to thank also our viewers for being patient with us as we fight through some connection issues, but we want to bring you those voices from Dakar. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, that's aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page, that's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. As you know, you can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle, @AJ Inside Story. From me, Cyril Vanier, and the entire team here in Doha, bye for now.